United States of America. This is Political Analytical. I'm your host, Eddie Hill, along with Rick Warren and Gordon Park. Join us as we give our opinion concerning everything dealing with politics. We don't hold back, so prepare for a no-nonsense approach to the news, and no, we don't care about your feelings. Uncensored and no sugarcoating. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Political Analytical. I'm your host, Eddie Hill, along with my other host, Rick Warren and Gordon Park. So this is what we got going on, folks. We've got a special tonight, which I know this isn't our normal Sunday show, but Gordon's got some real important things that he wants to talk about dealing with the Constitution and what's going on with it at this time, from the time that it was actually written to right now and the changes that were made. This is one of those shows you don't want to miss. This is one of those shows you definitely want to share throughout all your platforms. Please share it with everybody. Put it on your page. Get it out there. I'm going to be putting Gordon on. The rest of us are going to be quiet. We're going to be sitting in the backdrop. We're not going to be making a sound. This is going to be pretty much Gordon's show because he did this monologues, especially for you guys. And I want y'all to listen. It's really interesting. Gordon, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Eddie. How are you and Rick doing this evening?
Doing good.
I'm doing all right, Gordon.
Well, are y'all ready?
Well,
we're ready.
Of all, Gordon, I just wanted to tell you thank you for the work that you've done on this. I know that you've put in some hours and some time on this, and I appreciate that. I really do. I think it's something that's well worth all of us listening to. So the floor is yours, my sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you, guys.
I'm going to go ahead and put you on full screen, and you're going to take the show, and we're going to be back in the back hiding.
All right. Well, gentlemen, first and foremost, I want to say thank you guys for giving me a platform to be able to speak on. It means a lot that you guys are willing to give me an hour to be able to do this. Way I'm going to break this down is I'm going to talk about the Constitution, the Constitution says, and how it was originated and what it's supposed to be up through modern day today if nothing had changed. We will, the last 10 minutes or so, I'll answer some questions as best I can. Keep in mind that this is a hobby of mine. I'm not a legal expert. I didn't go to law school. So this is my interpretation of what I've read, and I believe in my interpretation of what I've read. So the Constitution started out and originated, and it was written, the original form was written in 1776 and then ratified in 1779. The original Constitution had 10 amendments. We now are sitting at 27. Some of the amendments that were added are necessary. Some of them are nothing more than the ability to make lifetime politicians, which is what we've done. The actual Constitution itself, prior to any amendments, has got 7 different articles inside of it. Each one of the articles deals with something a little bit different. It deals with how to set up different sections of the government. Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 1 is just that all the legislative powers that are written down inside of the Constitution will be vested in the Congress of the United States, and the Congress will consist of a House and a Senate representative. Now, our founding fathers were fairly smart, and in Section 2 of Article 1, they established that a representative in the House of Representatives cannot be any younger than the age of 25. And they do that because people prior to the age of 25 typically don't have enough life experience to be able to contribute much in the way of running a country. It gives Section 2 also gives the representatives the ability to direct taxes in cases of an emergency. Now, there's a long-standing discussion and debate as to whether or not the IRS is constitutional. I'll address that later, or if people have questions, I'll try to get to it, but I can't guarantee I'm going to get to it. But in a nutshell, based off of what I read, the IRS was made legitimate in the Constitution with an amendment. Back to the House. The House and the speakers of the House, they are chosen by their particular House members. So the House of Representatives gets to choose their leaders and their officers. Okay, moving into Section 3. Section 3 is something that of Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States delves into a lot about the impeachment process. The impeachment procedures are: the House has the right to convict somebody of and impeach them. The Senate has to try that impeachment, and the only way to try that impeachment is to have a senator and have a jury do it. Now, what is the greatest possible outcome of a Senate tried impeachment? For one, there has to be a jury, there has to be a judge. And in order for according to the Constitution, in order for the Senate to properly try a impeachment, it has to be a sitting member of the Supreme Court. This is all in Section 3 of Article 1. Judgment cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to remove from office. So let's just look at that first line. So when we're talking about when the Senate is trying a case, the only way that they can, according to the Constitution, and no other amendment in the Constitution addresses this, when the Senate is looking at trying a impeachment, the only thing that they are allowed to do is remove someone from office. That goes hand in hand with where we're sitting at with Trump and the fact that we're saying that it's unconstitutional. It's right here. Section 3, Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States reads, judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to remove from office, disqualify to hold and enjoy office, honor, trust, and profit under the United States. Okay? So that means that if you are no longer in that office, you cannot be impeached from it. That is Article 1. I'm sorry, Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution. We're not even 2 pages in, and they address this. Okay. Section 4 deals with holding of elections and how the original elections were held. The original elections were they would send people out on horseback, and people would go out and gather the votes. Then they would ride them back to the House. The House would put them together, and then they would present the nominee or present the votes to the Senate for verification. Senate 5, the House shall be the judge of the election. So if there's any discrepancies in what the election results are, then there's supposed to be public hearings through the returns and qualifications members to be able to see what's going on those. if there's any discrepancies. Section 6, senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by the law, paid out by the U.S. Treasury. They shall, in all cases, except for treason, felony, and breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at session. So what does that mean? That means that no sitting member while in session of the House or the Senate can be arrested unless they are for treason, felonious acts, or breach of peace. So I looked up what breach of peace actually meant. And it's basically anything done to disturb the peace. And with what's going on with our current impeachment trial with Trump, according to what I'm reading in Section 6 of the Constitution, in Section 6, Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States, we are looking at what should have happened is threefold. Number one, when the election results came out, if there was questions, if there was even one shred of voter fraud, then the House should have investigated. Number two, when the riots were happening and Maxine Waters and Kamala Harris and the others went on TV and said, burn, baby, burn. It's going to continue, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Those 4 people should have been arrested on the spot, strictly for breach of peace. That, when President Trump left office, this impeachment trial should not proceed. So we are 6 sections into Article 1, and we already find 3 breaches of the Constitution of the United States. Everybody who knows me well, knows that I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat. I am a constitutionalist. I believe that these were the rules that were set forth by our founding fathers, and these are the rules that we need to abide by. So we're moving forward, and Section 7 deals with how the Senate should pass laws and how Congress should pass laws. Section 8 deals with the power to lay and collect taxes, what they can do, how they can borrow money, what the rule of naturalization is, what they can do as far as coining money. Section 8 also has a clause in here that I want to read verbatim and let that sink in. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to read it verbatim, and then I want everybody to think about it, and then I'll explain it. Their responsibility, Congress's responsibility, is to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for the government, such part of them as may be employed to the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively. So that we're talking about state militias, the appointment of the officers, and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. So what does that truly mean? Everybody says, well, that has to do with our National Guard. No, our National Guard is a division of the Army. It's a armed services. According to this section, Section 7, one of the rules that is set forth for our Congress is to provide an armed and trained state militia for every single state that's in the United States. So according to the Constitution, we should have 50 armed militias right now that are not only armed by the government, but are trained militarily by the government. And the reason that is because we're also, as the people, charged with helping other states out in case of an invasion. And further in here in the Constitution, I think it's in Article 4, Article 5, it deals with what the state's responsibilities are and the reason why we're supposed to have the armed militia paid for and paid for by the government and trained by the government. Section 9, again, goes back to commerce and how the taxes should be run. Section 10 says that no state is allowed to have a treaty or alliance or a coalition outside of the United States. Article 2, Section 1 deals with the executive power vested to the president and how that works through Congress and what happens if the president of the United States is incapacitated or dies. So there's been a lot of talk about whether or not we need to have a 28th Amendment. And that amendment dealing with whether or not they're going to continue the electoral vote, which the 28th Amendment will toss the electoral and go strictly based off of popular vote. And number 2, it has to do with what to do in the instance of a president being incapacitated through his duties. But the problem is there's already a section in here. So they want to change the definition of what incapacitated means. And I didn't get as far as to what they propose in the 28th. I just know what the Constitution now says about the removal of a president from office for his death or resignation or inability to discharge his powers and duties of the office. And it has to do with sickness. That's it, just sickness. Section 2 names the President of the United States the Commander-in-Chief over the Army and the Navy and the Armed Forces. Section 3 saying that he is allowed to give Congress from time to time information on the State of the Union. That's the reason why we have the State of the Union address. It's actually a constitutional requirement of the president. And it actually, in Section 4 of Article 2, it says what the president and vice president can be impeached for. The president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for or conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. So what is treason? So we've often thought about treason being an actual act of betrayal of the country to another country or to a foreign enemy. The actual definition of treason is different. It's actually giving aid or comfort to an enemy. So when we look at treason and we talk about, well, he may or may not have given secrets. Okay, well, may or may not. We don't have any concrete proof. They're talking about just giving comfort. So just consoling, just talking to him can be considered treason. In this document, they address the penalties for treason. If you are convicted of treason, there is only one penalty, and you're shot. And it says in the Constitution that the penalty for treason is actually the drawing of your blood. You are shot to death in public. So got to be careful, with how we use that word, because that is a very loaded word in the United States. Bribery. If we held a trial of everybody in the DC, Senate, whoever, for bribery, we wouldn't have a Senate. We wouldn't have a House of Representatives, Senate, we wouldn't even have a president or a vice president. They'd all be convicted. Every single one of them would be convicted. And I'll get into that later. Article 3. Now we're into the judicial powers. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested into one Supreme Court and such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. And Section 2 deals with the structure of the courts and how they're supposed to be set up. Then Section 3 deals with exactly what the penalty for treason is, and I'm going to read it just so we all know. Treason against the United States shall constitute only levying war against them or in adhering to an enemy, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or the confession of that in open court. The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment for treason, but not entertain treason shall come from corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attained. So basically, they're going to shoot your ass. You commit treason, we're going to shoot your ass. Article 4 deals with the public acts. States are responsible for keeping their own records. The citizens of the United States shall be entitled to the privileges and immunities of the state that they live in. Section 3, new states to be admitted into the Union have to have a 2/3 popular vote. Article 4. Give me a second, guys. Apparently my battery is running low on my laptop. Hold on. All right, I think I fixed it. Article 5. Article 4 is just more of the guarantee of the State of the Union that it's going to be a Republican form of government, which Republican form meaning not a Republican versus Democrat, but just an open form. In Article 6 and 7 have to do, 7 is just basically the signatures. Article 6 has to do with where the debts and how the debts are paid for and by Congress. So now I'm going to start going through these first amendments, or the first amendments, and the date that they were added. Our First Amendment protects the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and the freedom of the right to petition the government for grievances. So that encompasses a lot. It means we can pray to who we want to. We can say what we want to. We can print what we want to. We can get together when we want to. And we have the right to go to the government and say, what the hell are you doing? That's our First Amendment. Okay. Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms. Now, let me find my resource page here. Because I want to actually physically read what the Second Amendment says, because they put it pretty blatantly. They do not leave any room for interpretation when it comes to the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That means it doesn't matter what the federal government wants. They're not allowed to touch our guns. They're not allowed to make any law, federal law, that even remotely attempts to touch our weapons. It's unconstitutional. Number 3, it deals with, restricts the quartering of soldiers in private homes. So if we had soldiers, if we were in peacetime or whatever, a soldier, just because he's in uniform, cannot just randomly come up and walk in your front door and say, I'm staying here because I'm a soldier. That's against the Third Amendment. And in some parts of the country, soldier or not, he's liable to get shot just walking in the house. Number 4, prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures and sets out the requirements for search warrants based on probable cause. Now, the Second Amendment attack that's going on right now, they're trying to make us pay a fine or a penalty for a gun of $800 per gun. Kind of goes hand in hand with what they're trying to amend the Fourth to do. What they're trying to amend the Fourth to do is say, hey, remember back in, we found a picture of you back in 1983, and you're holding this particular gun, and when you registered all your guns, that gun didn't come up, so we're going to here to search your home. Move out of the way. According to the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America, passed in December 15th of 1791, you cannot do that. And you have the right to defend your home at that point. The Fifth Amendment sets out the rules for the indictment by grand jury, eminent domain, the right of due process, and prohibits self-incrimination and double jeopardy. So basically that's the amendment you're quoting when you say, I plead the Fifth, is I refuse to say anything on the basis that it might incriminate me. Okay, and that also means that you cannot be tried for the same crime after you've been acquitted of it. That's the double jeopardy law. Double jeopardy law is let's say that I get angry with James Stoops and I'm accused of driving to Houston and beating him to death, and they throw me in prison. Or no, I'm sorry. I drive to Houston and maybe have beat him to death and then went back to my hometown. Houston comes back and says, you beat him to death and we're going to put you on trial, but I'm acquitted of it. They've said, nah, not guilty. We couldn't find a body. We couldn't find the bat. He's not guilty. We don't have enough evidence to pursue it. So he's not guilty by a jury of his peers. Well, 3 months later, they find the body and the bat. They cannot come back and charge me with the crime again. Make sense? Okay. The Sixth Amendment protects the right to a speedy and public trial by a jury of your peers. To notify of criminal accusations and to confront the accuser, and to obtain witnesses and retain counsel. So this is the 5 and 6 have to do with what you can do if you get into trouble with the law. Those are your rights when you get in trouble with the law. You have the right to face your accuser in court. So the seventh one is kind of a cool one. It provides the right and demands a trial by jury in civil cases over $25 or over $20. So if I sue James for being ugly, then for $500, just because he's ugly, then I have to have a trial by the jury of my peers. And they all have to agree with me that he's ugly. Then he has to pay me $500 for being ugly. Okay. The Eighth Amendment prohibits excessive fines and excessive bail, as well as cruel and unusual punishment. Okay. So again, we're going to look at this from a different perspective. So let's say that I get 27 traffic violations and I get picked up for speeding for my 28th and they take me to jail. I cannot be held on a bond for $150,000 for speeding tickets. That's excessive. That's a breach of my Eighth Amendment rights. Okay. Cruel and unusual punishment. So when I'm found guilty for all of those speeding tickets, paying those fines is reasonable and necessary. What is cruel and unusual is, making me serve 5 years in the federal penitentiary for those speeding tickets. That's cruel and unusual punishment. The Ninth Amendment states that rights are enumerated in the Constitution are retained by the people. That's an important one. Remember, this is pre-Civil War. This is pre-Abraham Lincoln screwing everybody up for what he's for in his federalism embarkment. I want to read this verbatim. The enumeration of the Constitution of certain rights shall not be constituted to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Essentially, that means is that states' rights are the states' rights. The federal government should not, cannot, will not, should not infringe upon those state rights at any time. The 10th Amendment. This is the last one that was ratified December 15th, 1791. The states that the federal government proposes only those powers delegated are enumerated through the Constitution. So we're only the federal government in 1791, December 15th of 1791, when they ratified this, they're saying, look, the federal government is not here to beat everybody up. We're supposed to be a small overall governing force. Your state and local governments are supposed to be the ones who set the way of life for everybody, not a federal government. That changed. Now, I want to take a step back here on a couple of things. We've often talked on the show about term limits. What does it mean to have a term limit? What does it mean to for these politicians that are career politicians? According to Article 1, Section 3, the rules of the Senate, there are 3 classes of senators. They're voted on a 6-year rotating basis with elections every 2 years. So they're split into 3 sections of 2 years each, 2, 4, and 6. So the newbies are in the first section of 2 years. Then 2 years later, when the second election comes, they're moved to the year 3 and 4, while the newbies go to 1 and 2. The old people are at 5 and 6. Once you're finished with 5 and 6 and you rotate out, you're not supposed to run again. You're out. You're rotated out. You're done. And this is the reason why I'm as adamant as I am about the constitutional law and the way things are and the way things are supposed to be. Constitutionally, when these guys back in 1776, 1791 created the system of government, These guys were farmers, storekeepers, military minds, generals in some case, like George Washington. They were not career politicians. There are rules in the Constitution on when they had to meet. They had to make these rules in the Constitution so to force these guys who were elected just to meet, because they were busy with their other lives. They were busy and worried about crop rotations and which crops they were going to bring in, and whether there was a drought or whether there was a flood. That's what these politicians were meant to be. They were meant to serve, not to be career politicians, sit around and collect a paycheck from the federal government forever. Because the federal government was supposed to be small. This wasn't supposed to be a position to make you rich. This was supposed to be a position you volunteered for or elected for, that you got a small stipend for, paid for by the U.S. Department of Treasury. Because remember, back in 1776, 1791, all the way up into the first part of the 1800s, the U.S. was just starting out. So it's not like we had a whole bunch of money to spare. So the stipend guys were getting was not enough to support them and their families. That's what the House and the Senate were about. People who were interested in making the country great, not people who are interested in making their bank account great. Some of the other amendments that I want to go over, some of the ones that are extremely important, in my opinion. There is an amendment that the 11th, 12th, and 13th were the Reconstruction of America, the Abraham Lincoln amendments. Amendment 11 says that we are not allowed to, that if you're tried and convicted in the United States, it's the long reach. It's what they call the long reach amendment. If you go overseas and are convicted overseas, that's against the Constitution. We're not supposed to be able to do that. Slavery was abolished, which I agree. That was an important one. That needed to be amended. 14, if you were born a U.S. citizen, born inside the confines of the United States borders, you automatically became a citizen. That's when we started. The 14th Amendment is when we started really kind of screwing things around by saying, okay, as these states gain population, that's when they can gain more representatives in the House. And that's when people started turning this into a career path and not a service, not a term of service. 15th, they say that the right to vote cannot be taken away by any state, which means that if the federal government says you can vote, the state of Tennessee cannot come back and say you can't vote because of your race or your creed or your religious beliefs. It wasn't until later on that they gave women the right to vote. And again, one of those amendments that I'm glad that they added, because that's the 19th Amendment, and women needed the right to vote. The 20th Amendment deals with when the presidential dates start and stop. And it is what it is. That's when they start and stop. They apparently pick some random date at the end of winter solstice to do that. I don't even know what rhyme or reason they had in picking the date that they did, but they did. One of the amendments did away with drinking and created prohibition. One of the amendments turned around and gave the right to drink back, which was great. Some of the others are kind of ridiculous. The 23rd deals with the Electoral College and how it's supposed to be run. Each state getting so many votes based off of the population and how many representatives you have in the House. So I'm going to stop there because I've gone over the important amendments. And I want to go on a little bit of a diatribe. Look, guys, if we were still living in 1791 rule, they were not allowed to change the Constitution as they saw fit for whatever reason they saw fit to do it. Our state governments would be the ones that we are answering to, not our federal government. Our federal government would be the size of a large city's town hall or mayoral house. We'd have our House of Representatives and we'd have the Senate, and their power would be very limited. Their power to levy money for roads, post offices, things like that. Each state would have an armed militia based off of the size of the population of that state. Mind you, that's not a militia that is the part of the army. This is a completely separate entity of private citizens that were trained by the government and armed by the government. Part of the state's rights, as I mentioned earlier, were for the defense of other states in case of invasion. So let's say that California was invaded from an outside entity. It would be the responsibility of the other 49 states to send their military armed militia, military armed and trained militia to California to hold the invading force off until we could get the Navy there, the Air Force there, the Army and the Marines there, the National Reserve there. That's what that amendment is for. It is for, and it is designed for, the defense of each and individual state. If Texas was invaded from Mexico, the other 49 states' responsibility is to send their militias down to help us. If North Dakota is attacked by Canada, which would never happen because, well, that's Canada. But anyway, it is the responsibility of all the states to send their troops up. Mobilizing forces in those days, and even in today, is horribly difficult. To send 1 million troops, mass 1 million troops, arm 1 million troops, and send them across the country. So again, that particular article is there for a reason. I've gone through the articles and the first 10 amendments. 1791 rules are your sheriff department is your most powerful resource. No one should be able to come see you except for the sheriff and the local police department. Members of the sheriff's department should have the most power in our counties in Texas and in the nation. Your parishes, if you're in Louisiana. Our local government should have more power than the federal government. Our state government should have more power than the federal government. The federal government was never designed to be a handholder. The federal government was designed to be an overseer, and that's it. No more. What has been perpetrated upon the American people now is a government that thinks they know better than the people that put them there, that thinks they know better and how we are supposed to act and respond that wants to strip our rights away to be able to defend not only us, but our neighbors. They've hamstringed us with the inability to create militias that are governed and trained by the United States to protect our borders. They've taxed us beyond all recognition. And they've broken the Constitution in 5 different places just with a single impeachment trial. I wanted to do this tonight primarily because people out there have lost, a lot of people out there have lost sight. You know, reading the Constitution of the United States of America is a lot like reading a legal brief written in the 1700s. Thee, thou, shall. It's hard to read. It's a hard read, and you almost have to have a dictionary there to do it. But has our United States really changed so much from 1776 to where we need to go from a 4-page document to govern us to a constitution and amendments that are greater than 180 pages long? There's an acronym that my dad taught me a long time ago. And he says, when in doubt, use KISS. KISS. I said, Dad, I'm not kissing you. He laughed at me. He says, no, it's keep it simple, stupid. And we have gone far above that. We have, as use Rick's word, we have bastardized our Constitution and our country beyond all recognition. Bribery. Told y'all I was going to get into bribery later. Part of what makes our government work nowadays is what we call special interest groups and lobbyists. Lobbyists are everything from the Christian Coalition to the NRA. But they are just as bad perpetrators as anyone else. Campaign contributions, which are legal. But coming back after those campaign contributions and saying, hey, you remember I gave you $1 million and helped you get reelected? Well, now I want this. BLM is doing that now. Antifa is doing that now. All of the politicians who have ever accepted 1 penny, Democratic National Convention, Republican National Convention, any of them, that entertain $1, $1, 1 cent of money from a special interest group can be impeached and thrown out of office for bribery, accepting a bribe. That's in the first article of the Constitution of the United States. Okay, judging by my clock, I've got 10 minutes left, so I want to open this up for questions. Questions? Anybody? Eddie, Rick, y'all there? All right. Let's see if I have any questions. There we go. There's Eddie and Rick.
And we are back, everybody. So, yeah. We had to see what questions we have on here. But you know what? Rick, can you read them? Because I ran in here without my glasses.
I don't really see any questions. I've got a couple of questions, Gordon.
Fire away.
On this impeachment that they are going on with. I understand why and where they're going with it as far as why they want to impeach and everything. But I guess my biggest question, Gordon, is who pays for a debacle like this when we have a very outstanding case of actually ludicrous. Do you understand what I'm saying?
We the people.
We the people.
Yeah.
That's just great.
We the people. You know,
go ahead, Deborah Fawcett.
We the people pay for everything.
Go ahead, Gordon.
We the people pay for everything. All right. We the people pay for everything. We don't have a choice. We the people pay when we get our paychecks. We the people pay when we go to the grocery store. We the people pay when we buy a new car. We the people pay when we sit down and take a deuce. We the people pay no matter what. The original tax set forth. Go ahead, Rick.
Do the people actually realize that the officials that they have in the state government, it can start at the city level and go to the state level, but do the people themselves realize that they are a powerhouse behind keeping this type of debacle in line?
They used to be, but they're not anymore. One of the amendments that was ratified, and I think it was, I don't know, I'll have to look back. I think it was the 25th or 26th, is that the federal government became more powerful. They wrote in one of the amendments that no state could now write a law or have a law that superseded the federal government. So all laws that pertain to anybody, any citizen of the United States in this country or across the world, any law that is written by the federal government has to be top law. No state could supersede it.
Okay, that's my
question. Real quick, Deborah Foster has a question. So why has this been allowed to go on? What has to happen to stop it? Is civil war the only answer?
This has been allowed to go on, Deborah, because the people voted for people who don't care. We voted somebody into office. Okay, well, guess what? An amendment to the Constitution is not something that is voted on by the people. It's only voted on by the House and the Senate. And all they have to have is a 2/3 majority vote.
And Danielle says, and to make it stop, the people need to realize we have that power and we can do something about it. The states need to take their power back and make it stop.
I agree. We do need to make it stop. But that's far more difficult than just saying it. It requires action. It requires people to stand up and say no more. Is the only answer that's left civil war? I'm beginning to believe so, and I'm beginning to believe that it's going to only take one final action, and this is going to be like the kid who drank too much on prom night. It's going to be an explosive vomit. It's just going to be an outcry, and it's going to be horrid.
You know, there was a time when I used to think that our democracy was a lot more refined, a lot more where, you know, it was set up better than any other country. And the more that I learn about politics, the more that I learn about how everything works, the more that I see that it's just an illusion. It's an illusion where we lie to ourselves about what's taking place in the country we live in, unfortunately. You know, don't get me wrong. I still love and I take pride in our country. I just do not take pride in our politicians.
You know, there has been one other case in American history of a people treated so poorly and so shabbily by a government. And that was how the Native Americans were treated in the early and mid 1800s. And I think that we are on the cusp of that being every man, woman, and child in the United States who doesn't go along with the mainstream way of thinking, the shut up and do it. We're getting ready to experience what the Native Americans have already experienced and gone through.
Now, Danielle says, Gordon, can you please explain to everyone the difference between a democracy and a republic?
That's a little bit trickier to explain. Democracy is one vote, one person. One person, one vote. The danger with a democracy is that it can lead to mob rule. A republic is a system of government that uses a democracy, but the problem with a republic is that it's, or not the problem, the better thing about a republic is that it takes into the people's considerations a whole lot more than a democracy does, because the democracy has the very real ability to fall into mob rule. See, we've gone from a republic to a democracy. And democracy is one man, one vote. Except, and again, another unconstitutional thing is you're not allowed to take a vote from a man, not on the state level, not on the federal level. You're a citizen of the United States of America, you are allowed to vote after age 18, whether you're purple, yellow, black, white, vanilla, pink with blue polka dots. No matter what you've done in your life, no one can take your right to vote, according to the Constitution.
Okay, real quick, Deborah says, I say no more, patriots need to unite. Clean this mess up. Be not afraid, for I am with you. And with that, we're going to go ahead and start our closing statements. We're just about out of time. Rick, we're going to start off with you, my brother.
Okay. Gordon, I just want to thank you for bringing this to our attention and the work that you did on getting this prepared and everything. Very, very well presented and very well thought out. It is my thought, though, and it is my feeling that we are going to see a continuation of the implosion of the political system that we now call the United States government. And it's going to happen, just like you said, within the next few weeks, months. It's not going to take long if we keep going down this road, because just like I said earlier, they have bastardized this Constitution and they have given the American people a black eye with everything that you just talked about tonight.
Absolutely. Gordon?
Yeah, thank you guys for coming on and listening. It makes me feel really good that you guys take an hour of your lives to listen to me rant and rave. But it's important to remember what your constitutional rights are. It's important to remember what our country started out as. It's what our country was founded on. And to look back and say and see whether the changes that our government has made have been good ones or have been bad ones. And so far, post Abraham Lincoln, post Civil War, with the very few exceptions, we haven't done such a great job. Something has got to give. We have got to do something to fix this. We have got to do something to take away the mob rule, the mob mentality, and to start thinking about what is going to make our country the greatest country in the world again. Because right now we're not. We have screwed that away. What we spent 200 years working on, we've blown in the last 50 to 75 years. It's been horrid. But it's time to take our country back.
You know, after listening to the show, Gordon, you know, I have to say I'm still in shock, really. I grew up as a military brat. I've always learned to follow orders, all the way from my dad, uh, even, you know, ROTC, the police academy, and being in the military myself. And it's it's really depressing when you think about what we've lost throughout the years and didn't even know it. What was being taken away from us and stripped from us little by little, and we didn't even know it.
Yep.
The safety that we felt that we had, and did we really have it? It makes you question a lot of things. You know, I cannot say that I'm against the United States. I'm not. I love this country. You know, I would fight and die for this country. I love this country. And I still, in my own heart, feel that it's worth saving, and we need to save it the best we can. Not only for ourselves, but for our children, our grandchildren, so forth and so on down the line. It's our duty as Americans to stick up for our country, to fight for our country, and to do the best we can to make our country a better place each and every day.
Yep, I agree.
With that being said, we love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Gordon, it was an amazing job you did on this. You know, thank you so much for bringing it forward and doing it. To everybody out there, you know, thank you so much for joining us. Please share the show on your page. Please share it on your page, on your friends' pages, on other platforms. Put it out there, no matter where it may be, so that other people can see it or listen to it. It will be put out as a podcast as well, so you can take your pick whether you want to put it out on audio or the video. Just make sure you get it out there, because everybody deserves to hear this. So until next week, well, actually this week, Sunday, I forget, this is a special edition of Political Analytical. Y'all take care. We love you guys. Be safe and stay strong, and always, always, always keep a good attitude.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Good night, guys.
Good night, gentlemen.